Welcome back in the Feed Your Brain podcast. My name is Max and I have a very, very special guest in the podcast today. It's Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. Really taking care of culture, really building up culture at VaynerMedia. A lot of people know, of course, Gary and his videos, and a lot of people are amazed in Europe how Vayner is really exploding or emerging in culture, and especially since it's growing so fast. And we now have the leading person behind the company who is really building up that culture with Gary together, of course. And I once saw a video where Gary said that you are the most important employee for him because culture is important for him, culture is important for you, and somehow you guys bring it together and lead it up to the whole company. And I've been following you on Instagram, and I can really feel the love that you are somehow bringing to the people, and I was just amazed by it. I love it. And after we had Steve Babcock, the creative genius behind Vayner, in the podcast, which was amazing. It feels great to have you on here as well. Welcome to the podcast, Claude.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Feed your brain. I'm ready. I'm ready to get fed.
Let's see if you feed the people or we feed you. Let's. So
cool.
You're sitting in New York, probably, right?
Yeah, I'm in our New York office. It's Friday. Summer day, gorgeous, and ready to roll. I've been looking forward to chatting with you.
Nice. How's the culture on Fridays? Do you have certain like topics on Fridays that make Vayner special on Fridays, or is it just like a normal work day?
It's a normal work day. I think because it's summertime, everyone's kind of jonesing to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people for the most part really enjoy being here, and they're cranking. It feels good. There's a good vibe. Last night, Gary had his sneaker launch.
Oh, I saw that. I actually have the sneakers on here. Wait, there you go.
Nice.
Of course.
Right. Clouds and dirt. So
Right.
Some of us went there, and so we might be a little bit groggy up here, but it was a cool party. Really, really stoked for him, and I love what he's brought into VaynerMedia, even more than the average advertising agency, because he's so culturally relevant.
Mm-hmm.
He brings another level of excitement to us that I think other agencies just don't quite feel, because there's no one at the top that is as avant-garde and in it as he is.
Right, and of course you are somehow a big part of him as well. I mean, if you wouldn't be the culture part, he couldn't be it. I mean, he has different stuff to do as well, and he somehow gives you the mission to maintain the culture, right?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think he's such an HR person. Like, he's such a heart guy, and so am I. And so it's just it's a really awesome pair.
Mm-hmm.
And he's here today, and I just have seen him in a couple rooms having one-on-ones with people, and it makes me so happy, because that energy that he gives someone in 5 minutes is just, it's worth 5 months of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. That's what I talked a lot about it with Steve as well, even though we talked a lot about creativity. But of course, the distribution of like interest in other people is quite rare to him, and I think you got the same elements that make you an important part, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very fortunate that he and I ever met, which was in 2013.
Okay.
Because I've always been me, and this is who I am. But
Right.
meeting my other half, meeting my brother, it that much more enables me to just be me to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's a place that really welcomes my vibe and my energy and my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows me to just triple down on being all heart focused and culture focused and people focused.
Right.
So,
right.
had we not met, I still would be me, but it's just that much more fun to do it here.
Yeah, how did you meet actually? I mean, you have been at Publicis before, which is also a huge agency. I mean, as far as I know, you worked you were the head of strategy and digital, which somehow appears to be a little further away from culture, maybe than the position you have now. So how did it all come together? I mean, how did you end up being a CHO of Vayner?
Yeah, well, we met, one of my best friends introduced us when I was living in London at working at Publicis London.
Right.
She introduced us on an email, and then I came to New York and we met for half an hour, and it was just like, okay, there's something there. And we kept chatting and chatting. And sure enough, I eventually accepted a job at VaynerMedia New York, moved here, and I started doing something different here. We didn't have an HR department or a culture department or anyone really like looking after people other than Gary. And it was very apparent, I think, early on as he and I would start to chat that, oh, we wanted the same thing here. Like I didn't really, it's not that I don't care about advertising. I had done it for so long, and there's more people that care about advertising that care about what I do. And he was just like, that's it. You're going to be chief heart officer. I mean, it happened over a span of time and, of course, and conversations, but it was just like, I love the people here. I really feel like I'm engaged with what this agency does today, but more than that, where we want to go tomorrow. And so it was just a match made in heaven. And then I said to him, how do we know if I'm successful? And he said, you're going to touch every single employee and infuse the agency with empathy. Wow. I was like, all right, let's go. Let's roll up my sleeves and let's hit it. So that's what I do every single day. I speak to many, many people. I have enormous amounts of one-on-ones, and then I touch base with different leaders and really do my best to get to feel the vibe, the vibe of the culture and the texture of the culture, and then make moves as need to be.
Right.
And perfect example, Max, real-time example, like literally happened 2 seconds before you and I started. I found out that this very, very nice restaurant here in town wants to give away free lunches today. And so they wrote me and they said, do you have any teams that want a free lunch? And I said, I know of this one creative team that's been in the trenches for like 2 weeks, just like into, late nights and whatnot. Boom. And now they have a free lunch, which is like, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. And I wouldn't have known that had I not spoken to a couple of the creative members yesterday and today.
Right. So you really felt, okay, maybe they need a free lunch now. They need something to get them distracted from the everyday work they have. Yeah,
they needed something. And it just so happens to come in the package of a free lunch. It would have, whatever, it could have been something different. It could have been ice cream. It could have been a day off when they finished this. But it was so in the moment, serendipity. And, for us, speed is everything.
Right.
Speed. And so that was like, boom, 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 great. I know they're going to feel very acknowledged and recognized. And that is all heart. So I feel good about that. I don't feel like it's cheap and cheerful. I feel like it's really coming from a place of, yeah, you guys have been crushing it. Thank you for crushing it.
Right. I love it. I mean, you mentioned a couple of words that I really liked, which is empathy, heart, really feeling how other people feel. So it seems to be that you need to listen more than you speak, which is amazing. I mean, I can totally see how people are how influenced by the work you do, and it's obvious. I mean, if you see how fast the company is moving, and if you see how the culture still stays the same, there needs to be a person who somehow stays behind all the movement. Culture is still, as you talk to Gary as well about it, culture seems to be quite a topic that is not clear. Like you don't have certain KPIs for culture, right? I mean, it's something that is more in the clouds than maybe in the dirt, and it's somehow, of course, something in the mix. But how does it all happen with the leading people? I mean, you also have a chief financial officer who, of course, has an eye on all the financial topics, and they need to hit certain maybe ground breaks to make the next year more or less. And how does culture fit into the whole leadership team? How can we imagine that?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is, you mentioned cultures in the clouds, kind of.
Right.
The way I mention it, funny enough, is clouds and dirt, because
Mm-hmm.
the culture, Gary blesses the culture from here,
Right.
from the clouds. He and me and everyone else is nurturing the culture from the soil.
Got it.
Every single human being here, let's just say, is a flower. Let's just use that metaphor.
Uh-huh.
So we're watering the garden every day. We're tilling the soil every day. We have to touch and feel and listen and take action with every single person. So to put it really simply, there is no culture if it's just here.
Mm-hmm.
Culture
Got it.
exists from the ground up. And so the culture here is the first and foremost thing. You don't have financial returns without a positive culture.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have happy people here that want to, grind until 9 p.m. at night without a culture that supports them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have sustainability on a global level without a culture that runs through it. So for me, it is really difficult to measure. And that's why I think Gary and myself are very hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said already, we need to feel it. And once you feel someone else, and that's empathy, then you get more of a sense of like, okay, how are we doing here? Like, how are we doing? Is this a culture that is based around joy, or is it based around fear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I touch it. It's based around joy.
Right.
And so I'm on the offense. My job is people. My job is to work for people. So like, give it to me and I will be there. Like, I'm offense. Our CFO, who's an amazing guy, he's defense.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to, save us money. He's trying to keep us in line in our targets and our, projections and all of that stuff. And I'm doing the same, but we're making the people satisfied, seen, and happy so that they will bring us the returns,
Right.
so that they will service those clients. And at the end of the day, so they will touch the hearts and minds of the consumers.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a mix of bringing defense and offense together, right? I mean, of course, Gary is 300% offense. You seem to be 300% offense, but there is someone in the back, I would say, who also considers defense as an important part of the culture or as an important part of the company. And then you bring all values together, and that makes the company great, right? I mean, saving money, but also bringing culture forward, having a CEO who also brings the mission forward together with the team that's around him.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have everything. I think in today's day and age, especially with the population that we have, which is primarily millennials,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be giving people what it is that they need to thrive, not just survive.
Mm-hmm.
Surviving, that's easy.
Right.
But to thrive and to grow and to feel like this is a place that is going to give me opportunity. It's going to give me life skills. It's going to give me hard skills. It's going to give me connection and a sense of belonging. And I will achieve something. That's what people want.
Right, right. And what do you think, where does it start? I mean, culture, if it needs to start somewhere, of course, there's a CEO who, when he started the company, he already had culture in his blood like nobody else probably. And you can feel that through his videos. You can feel, I felt it through Steve, who was in the podcast. I can feel the same thing now with you. It feels very, very special, of course, if you have a CEO who leads culture in a different way. But let's say there's a company who maybe has a CEO or they have a founder culture, but he doesn't really know or she doesn't know where to start with culture. What would you explain, or how would you explain it, or how would you recommend somebody to really have that soil that you explained to bring up the culture to the dirt, to the clouds, let's say?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say immediately is to listen.
Okay, great.
Bring people in, whether or not you bring them in a town hall, you bring a lot of people together and you give them an open mic and they talk to you, or you bring them in an office one-on-one. You have to listen to the people and they will tell you things. And as you start listening and you collect information, you'll recognize patterns. Now, once you have patterns, you can act. You're like, oh, I've heard this now, not from 1, 2, 3 people. I've heard it from 10 people. Let's go. So culture to me isn't, it's not free beer, and it's not ping pong tables, and it's not just, it's not giving away things for free. Culture is enabling people to be their best, and that takes that takes leadership, listening to them and responding to them with what it is they're asking for in a relationship. It's about, this is a relationship. So that's the first thing I would say. And then I would also say, then start to just make waves. I always say, have the audacity to speak up and say, you know what, I have an idea. Let's do it differently today.
Right.
Let's try something new today. That other way, it's stale. We've already done that. Let's do something new. Break it a bit.
So actually,
and
so what, you watch patterns and then make patterns and then also break patterns again to have a new cycle, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the wonderful things about Gary and working for someone like Gary, is that he's always making and breaking and recreating, making, breaking, recreating. And so that, if that's our leader, then that gives us a lot. The ethos is right there, to not be afraid to do things differently. He's not a micromanager. No one's looking at you being like, up, 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 up. We give people so much possibility here, because we want them to come in and bring their own creative ideas and bring their own strategy in here. And like, I want the people that come to work to be as stoked as they are on the weekends when they're playing soccer, as they are, I want them to bring that energy into work.
Right.
I want them to bring that creativity when they decide to go to the movies or they decide to go to the gallery over the weekend. Bring that into work, that same energy, because guess what? It's contagious.
Right, and what you can feel at Vayner's, I mean, I got in touch a little with Tyler and D-Walk, of course, and apparently you can see that they are still friends on the weekends, right? They work together 24/7, but on the weekends they also hang out. And it seems like the company and working and free time doesn't seem to be a big thing, because people are enjoying being at work and being with friends and being with people that they don't know, to get just to talk to other people. And it really seems to be a culture where exchanging and friendship building is priority number one, right?
Yeah, and it actually, we don't enforce it. It happens organically. That's just killer.
Right. I think that's something that a lot of German companies fail at the moment, because they try to really push culture in a certain way, but don't reverse engineer and say, okay, exactly what you actually said. What do the people want, and how can we serve the people? How can we do something for them? And it's always here, especially in Germany, a lot of companies are going the wrong way, as I suppose. So yeah.
I think, just to sum that up, I think there's a difference between fear and fear-based companies doing things that you think the people want, rather than being on the offense, listening and then attacking it that way.
Right.
If you're in an ivory tower, you're never going to know what the people want.
Right.
But if you're in the soil, easy.
Right, and you need to be on the daily grind, more or less, right?
Yeah.
You need to really feel what the people are working on. Got it.
Yeah, I have to walk around here, and I have to talk to people, and I have to, listen to what kind of music is in the bathroom, and see what's happening for lunch, and go to the other offices, and see if people are going and starting their day with a yoga class together, and look at how they're talking with one another across the aisles, and gotta just, I need to feel it, and that's how we know.
How do you make that happen? Because I think there are certain people who also would love to be a chief heart officer of a company, but maybe the acceptance of the employees is not there totally. I mean, of course, American culture is a little more freedom, a little more mind expressing than maybe German culture is, from my heart, what I think. But how do you make it happen that people really trust you, that people tell you stories about maybe their private life? How do how do you make the transition from, okay, you are a foreigner at first and you are a friend after the meeting, more or less?
Yeah. So I really think the only way I can answer that question is either you really give a shit about people or you don't. I mean, sorry for the language, but
No worries, it's cool.
either you really care about people and or you don't. You're either self-aware enough to know you're not the only human being, and you're not selfish, and so you want to be a giver and be a generous person and come from the heart, or you don't. And so, I started by saying to you, I worked as a strategist in other agencies, but I was always myself. I didn't all of a sudden become chief heart officer and I started to give a shit about people.
Right.
I always have. So I would still be doing me, even if my title was post officer. If I was a male, if I was working in the post office, I would still be Claude.
Right.
If I was bagging groceries at the market, I'd still be a chief heart officer.
Right.
Because that's my nature. So the thing is many people now, they see HR, human resources, as the police, and as the people that only like issue you your paycheck and your benefit, or they fire you. And that's just such a misconception. But we've been programmed to think that, HR, we're just like, they're like robots. They don't feel, they don't think, they just do, serve, and that's not it. We're here to encourage employees to be their best selves and to be human and to engage with life, not just work. So anyway, you asked me, how do people become a chief heart officer, and how in Germany we're this way, and maybe America we're a little bit more liberal, which is true.
Right.
But either you have it or you don't have it. And my belief is that more people have it than they think they do.
It's more about like getting to know yourself and really understanding that you are maybe a culture person, but of course you have surroundings that tell you maybe, okay, culture is something that we at first don't want to get too much into detail because of like spirituality and the different topics that people are sometimes feared of. Do you think it's really believing in or really understanding once first before you actually can act as a chief heart officer?
Well, that certainly helps.
Okay.
because when I'm listening to people, I'm not thinking what I need to do later on today, or I'm not thinking like, oh man, you're really boring me. I think like, I'm thinking, how can I best serve you? But I know that about myself now. I know that life is not just about me. I know that I'm put on the earth to be of service to people. So
you have probably learned that over time, right? It's not something that was given to you from day one. Of course, you have the claw that you are and that you are expressing. Of course, that has been there forever, but really understanding that you are the claw that you are has probably emerged over time, right?
Yeah, it's an evolution. I've matured. And my hope, and I think your hope would be that everyone in life has the opportunity to evolve themselves, right, and become more aware of surroundings, and that we need each other. There's no such thing as one. Right. I mean, we're in a community together, whether or not you're in a community that is called a family, a community of friends, of a football team, of a work environment. We're in community. We need one another. So how do you reach out to another person? Well, you realize like they have the same feelings and emotions you do too. So just get real. Get real. I know it sounds so common sense. I know I speak in these words that make it feel, for me, it really is common sense. And I recognize that it's not for everyone. And my hope is that in the next 5 or 10 years, you're having so many conversations with people that are doing things like this because it's become more of the norm.
Hmm.
You know, that would be my hope.
Right, right. Totally makes sense. I mean, you can see me smiling through the whole interview, which means that uh, you actually transport or you can really deliver the vision and the dirts that you have in your mind. I think it's amazing. It's amazing to listen. It reminds me a little bit of Robin Sharma and his book The Leader Who Had No Title, I guess.
Ah,
Was
I don't know it.
Yeah, it's also a book about like leadership and how people don't have leadership roles, but they should serve as a person for other people.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
that,
That like is, yeah, that makes me happy.
so I maybe read something that is close to how you think, which is cool.
Yeah.
What people asked me also before, I mean, I already talked to you in the pre-talk that a lot of people were actually asking questions since they heard that you were on the show. One question that they ask is how, like, what is actually required from a perspective to have a culture building process. So what do you, when you came to Vayner, of course you had Gary, who you experience and you know that he cares about culture. Were there other things that you said, okay, they are important for me as a person to build and maintain the culture that I want to have in Vayner? Is there something else besides the CEO that of course is important?
Yeah. So I scale Gary,
Hmm.
and then I've had to create culture champions to scale me.
Right.
So how do you do that? Again, it's all about spending time with people
Hmm.
and allowing people to understand what our DNA is,
Hmm.
what's in our veins, and to start to express that with their own individuality, but keeping the same theme of our
Hmm.
DNA.
Hmm.
So, for example, the way you express hustle
Hmm.
might be different than the way I express hustle,
Right.
but the theme is still the same. We know that hustle is like being on your toes, ready to dive in,
Hmm.
not being afraid to catch the ball and run.
Right.
The way it manifests for you is going to look like Max does it. The way it manifests for Claude is going to, but it's still the same essence of hustle,
Hmm.
you know, or for example, the same essence of um, collaboration,
Right.
working with others, So I try to educate people on what our values are,
Hmm.
so that they can carry the culture, because we're VaynerMedia is around 600 people. VaynerX, which
Hmm.
is now PureWow and Vayner Sports and all this other stuff, is over
Hmm.
800 people,
Wow.
expanding all the time. And
Hmm.
so you need people who can speak the language,
Right.
speak the cultural language. What the word culture, where it comes from?
I don't know.
Well, it comes from the Latin word that's cultura.
Cultura.
Yeah, cultura, cultura.
I learned Latin in school, so I can
Oh,
remember
great.
a little
You
bit.
know, so cultura means the cultivation of the soul.
Wow.
Like, that's deep. The cultivation of the soul. So the soul here is the company,
Hmm.
and the soul here is 800 people. And how are we constantly like I said, it's like a flower, it's in the soil. How are we cultivating that, weeding it, taking away all of the unnecessary things,
Hmm.
so that the culture can grow, so that the human beings can grow.
Right.
The cultivation of a human being, that's what we're doing here, by way of by way of housing all of these human beings in a company.
Hmm.
It's fascinating, and it is really like esoteric for me sometimes. So I recognize I go off in esoterica and metaphor land, but
No, I love it. I mean, that's exactly, I think, what culture is about. It's a little more than just one or two sentences. It's really about describing how a person and how a company feels like. I mean, that's I think what culture is
Yeah.
about. What I think is interesting here, because it just came to my mind, is of course Vayner has 600 employees, but maybe for all the people that don't know, Vayner's I think has 4 or 5 different locations, London, and I think 3 or 4 different locations in the United States. So you are not only on one point, but you also have cultures from different countries, from different heritages, from different family backgrounds. So there's a lot that you need to somehow bring together to one culture. Is there therefore a certain like person that you look for when you hire a person, or when Gary hires a person for his team? Is there really something that you guys are looking for? Is it values, or how do you look for people? Is it values, skills, organizational thinking? What's important for you then?
Yeah. So we used to just look for culture fit.
Okay.
So like, oh, Max, you like Pearl Jam? I like Pearl Jam. Cool, you're hired. Or like, Rock On, you like to surf? I like to surf. You're hired.
Right.
Okay, that gave us some great people, but it also gave us the same people. Now we hire for skill set fit and culture addition.
Got it.
So now it might be, oh yeah, Max totally knows how to code for Facebook and Instagram, or Max totally knows how to make documentaries with a video camera. And he may not like Pearl Jam, but he might like classic rock. All right, cool. So the point is as we've grown and we've become more specialized in what it is we do, we need more specialized employees, candidates. But what we're looking for is people that have values in the same postal code. Meaning, again, what hustle looks like to you is gonna look similar to me. It's not gonna be identical.
Right.
And that way, if we go back to that flower metaphor, we're both flowers, we're both roses. Yours is yellow, mine is red.
Right.
We're both in the same family, but we are different.
That's an amazing metaphor. I've never heard that before. So from that point, it's also great to hear a different perspective on how people can come together. I love it. Like I just imagine, okay, like, do you think it's a mistake that you beforehand just went for cultural fit, or do you think it was a good decision that you said, okay, first let's say 400 employees, we only focus on cultural fit, and now in the last for the 200 employees that we have now, we focus on different stuff as well?
No, it was great. It was great because it sped us. It got us to where we needed to be very quickly. It got us to a culture that is grounded in love and grounded in being the bigger person, and grounded in self-awareness and courage and compassion. It got us there quick.
Right.
That's cool. Then we can add on all of these other things because, again, our baseline it rocks.
It stays the same, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, when people leave here, the one thing they always say is, man, I love this culture. I love the people. And when people leave and they want to come back, they always write me and Gary, and it says, I really miss the culture. I didn't realize how good I had it. That's the biggest compliment in the world.
Right. I mean, if people, like, exactly in the discussion we have now in the world, where people really care about where they work and how they work and with which people they work, I mean, the discussion gets bigger and bigger, and there are less and less companies who actually can still fulfill people's dreams of having a workplace where you would love to work. And it's more or less the startups who somehow maybe give people the chance to experience themselves in a culture that they love. But especially bigger companies, which we of course have in Germany as well, they have problems with that because they have a culture which is from the soil completely different than maybe Vayner has built it up over the time. So I love what you just said, how people really need to bring in, and you really have that baseline that covers the whole company throughout. I love it.
Yeah, awesome.
How's that whole thing organized? I mean, at the beginning, I just love how the circle now comes together, which I just realized. But you at the beginning you talked about, okay, you go during lunch breaks, you go through the hallway and you say hi to people and you see what they're talking about. Then you organize lunch meetings for people that are working really extremely hard at the moment. Are there other routines that you do on a, let's say, weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis? Of course, you talk to a lot of people, but is there something else that helps you routine-wise to build the culture and to really maintain the culture that you have? Is there something that you want to share to other people that love to work in the cultural topics?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I've never actually been asked that question, which is awesome. So yes. The one thing that I think is really unique is that monthly I will pull together random people,
Mm-hmm.
and I will have what I call a town hall. And I'm pulling together specifically people that have been here for 8 years, 5 years, 3 months, people that are in the creative department, the finance department, the paid media department. I will pull together people that don't know each other, because for me, the most fun is to watch people get to know each other. And so
Imagine.
I do that once a month. I do it a few times, but once a month.
Uh-huh.
And I usually open it up. I do some, I should say, I open it up for questions, but I have to start. I have to give them something. And so I usually write on the whiteboard some coaching methodologies that I use when I do
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one coaching. And then you can see people's eyes come to life when I start talking about purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and I start talking about achievement and fulfillment. And then we start going into like, hey, Bobby, hey, Sue, hey, Frank, do you feel like you really know what your purpose is? And do you really know what, are you achieving things? And for me, it gets us all into a very safe space, I would hope, safe,
Mm-hmm.
a brave, courageous space to be vulnerable with one another. When you can be real, I'm not gonna drop you. I'm gonna hold
Mm-hmm.
you. So
Right.
you know that. I'm gonna hold you. And we've created an environment in this room that we're gonna hold you. And so we can start to have some brave conversations, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not all peaches and cream. It's not all roses every day. This is life on life's terms. We're
Mm-hmm.
humans.
Right.
So I want to bring that to the forefront, which is, as much as I'm talking about culture and it rocks,
Mm-hmm.
there are days and there are moments where it's like, oh God, that was a hard day, or wow, that was really tough when, you terminated my writing partner. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. So
Right.
that's what I do. I just call them courageous conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they are. And so I do that multiple times, once a month.
Right. Bring people together and really learning them, yeah, or really getting them to meet each other, right? I mean, and
Yeah. And
learning from the experiences there.
yeah. And being, feeling safe,
Right. Right. Which
feeling
is.
like it's okay. Like, look, I'm a human being too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have feelings too. And so, like, don't they? Yeah, they do. I'm going to smell my candle because it smells so good.
What smell is it?
It is, I think it's like vanilla-y. I have candles in here. And, I don't have a desk in my room.
You don't? Are you just
Nope.
sitting on a chair now?
Yeah, I just have it set up with 5 chairs in a circle.
Oh, okay. So okay. When you have a meeting, you just have a circle and people can talk to each other, or instead of
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting because Gary has a table, right?
He has a table. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think he also has a table because he's got equipment he's got to put on the table.
Okay, makes sense.
But yeah, for me, I just, I have this magnificent view of the Empire State Building and Freedom Tower and the water. And when people come in here, they always say, wow, it feels so zen in here, or it feels so relaxing or peaceful. And I want it to feel good. I want it to feel like you can come in here and we can talk about your mom that's sick. So my last conversation, someone's mom is really sick. Someone got engaged. Someone could tell me that they've been working, 70 hours a week. Someone can tell, I want people to be able to be real and feel like it's okay.
Right, right. And really having also from a room point something that is safe and feels trustful, right? And that's a good point, that it's more than just the person that's sitting next to each other. It's also the room or the environment that you are also living in. I mean, I feel a little sad now that we are doing it online. Maybe we should do an offline session again.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, it's really an incredible place. And even if I didn't have this view, and even if I didn't, I would still have a circle. I would still not have a desk in the room.
It's so interesting. I've never heard that, I think, before. And I've worked in different companies as well, even though I'm still studying, but I've never seen a circle in a meeting room. I mean, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I need to write a Medium piece, like an article on why I don't have a desk here.
Please, I will definitely share it.
Okay, I will.
Credits to the interview.
Yeah, exactly. Way to go, Max.
One thing that I also got asked, which I also find super interesting, I covered it a little with Steve, but not into so much detail, which is that Vayner it's of course Gary who is showing that in the videos. He seems to be insanely productive. I sometimes really don't understand how you can be that productive in 15-minute meetings. I've tried it in different occasions also to see if 15 minutes work for me. It seems to be really difficult, and he seems to be extremely productive on the one hand. And on the other side, you really seem to be a human-centered company or a human-oriented company. And I really don't understand how that's possible, to be insanely productive, have quick meetings, but still have the person in mind. Maybe you can deep dive a little here, how that is possible to be insanely productive and do the other part.
Well, yeah, it's all about being present when you're with someone, being completely present and listening and collecting information. That is what it is. I mean, so if you're present and you're really actively listening to someone, meaning I'm not thinking about what I need to do at the grocery store later, or I'm not thinking like, oh man, I should have written that email a little bit differently. But you're just here in the moment, your time is well spent.
Right.
Because then you're a sponge. And then you are listening, or you're asking questions, and you take in all of this information. And he has the ability, just like I do, to store that information someplace, to either when I need it to act on, or when I'm looking again back for those patterns.
Right.
But the thing with Gary, and I think the thing that makes us really efficient here, is the time management. The ability to squeeze the most out of 5 minutes and have help managing time. Tyler and Alex, who are managing his calendar all day, like that's a lot of moving parts.
Right.
I have someone that manages my calendar all day, like,
hi Julia.
So yeah, exactly. So those minutes are really, really important because they're so full of meaning.
So what do you look for in time management? Is there something that, like, time management also is something, is there like a tactic that you want to share that is important to time management? Because a lot of people get distracted here and there, and they see Instagram posts and they get distracted again. And it really seems to be a big problem for people at the moment with all the different technologies. Is there something that you want to share that helps you in person?
Yeah, so it's actually how I use my energy. So time management, yes, is okay. I have 10 minutes from this to that. That's 10 minutes. But that doesn't mean I'm looking around, or I'm when I'm with that person, they have all of my energy. And so what I say to people that are out on the floor, or project managers or creatives or whatever, is give yourself a milestone. Okay, I'm going to really, really work hard, and I'm going to just crush the next hour. I'm going to crush it. No distractions. After that hour, I get 10 minutes of free time. I get to go walk around. I get to check Instagram. That's managing your time, but also managing your energy. I'm going to give it my all right now, and then I get free time. for 10 minutes because I hit my milestone.
Great, love it.
Yeah, that's what I suggest.
Great piece of advice. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that you can cover immediately. Is there something like a book that you wanna recommend in regards to culture, or is there a piece of knowledge that you want to share here?
You know, there's a lot of books that I have that I think are really, really, they're very special. I think there's certain bits of books that are very, very special.
Got it.
Because you know, culture is organic and everyone does it a little bit differently. So I don't necessarily know if it's a book I would recommend other than this idea of just getting in touch with yourself. If you're a culture carrier and you're a person that is going to be in charge of steering and cultivating the culture, then I think you really want to figure out, like, where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of emotional health? Are you coming from a place of joy? Are you coming from a place of empathy? Are you coming from a place of fear? Are you coming from a place of scarcity? You know, figure you out, because people will emulate the energy that you put out there.
Right.
That's the truth. And so when Gary says make positivity louder, he himself is making positivity louder. And there are hundreds of thousands of people that are into Gary, and they're making positivity louder. So, but he knows himself. I know myself. And so right there, I think that's, you know, it's like just getting in touch with who you are. That's my heart, my head, and following your own bliss, making yourself happy, finding out what it is that makes you unhappy and dealing with it. You know, this is like a therapy session here, but
no, I love it.
You know,
I love it.
It's really true. So I like Brene Brown a lot in terms of books.
Okay.
I think Brene Brown is fantastic, and her book Daring Greatly is a really special book.
Daring
and
Greatly.
Yeah, Daring Greatly.
Oh wow, I've never seen that before. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's a good book to read. Yeah. So, but if any of your listeners, you know, want more recommendations, they can just write me on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn.
Great. I mean, I think I'm voluntarily offer myself to write together a book with you. I mean, we got an interview. Okay. I think with 60 minutes with this interview, you can write a whole book. Super interesting. Yeah. I mean, you should probably have that in mind somehow.
Yeah, I know. It's something people say a lot, and I just need to do it. And I think I'm better at conversation. But you know, I like if you give me the transcript of this, we'll write one. We'll write a post together. How about that?
That's a deal. I will definitely follow up on that.
Okay, amazing, Max.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I just want to say hello to all of your listeners in Germany and everywhere. That it's been great to talk to you, and I really, really value the time that we spent together.
Likewise, I really enjoyed it. Maybe you can, I will just post everything in the show notes that is interesting in regards to getting in touch with you. And just loved it. Thanks a lot, Claude.
Yeah, thank you. We'll chat soon.
We will, definitely.
Okay.